Buenos días.
Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats. We are going to start our day. We have to work on our statements and, of course, also present our plan. So, the ecological dream, economics, public and ecological debt, possibilities of remission in face of a new financial architecture. So we're going to hear the message from Pope Francis from Rome. It is a culture of expropriation, a culture that expropriates the healthy and normal use of nature from so many people. If we if we look further ahead in Southeast Asia, for instance, entire populations are completely marginalized. And this is an economic crisis that does not include, that separates and favors a small group of people and misuses our common heritage. It is a process that transforms us from free people into enslaved people, not slaves of the land, of nature, but slaves of things that are not human, like excess and the outcast, who are men, women, and entire populations that we left on the road like waste. And we need to become aware of it, that the wealth of nature is being used only for small groups on the basis of socio-economic theories that do not integrate nature. We also believe that there is a crucial role to be played by alternative ways, and we need to be very inventive to protect nature. And young people, have faced the same problems, and we have to choose between comfort, between what is convenient to us and what is more harmonious, and that inner vocation that we all have to do things properly. And teaching young people to make this decision, which is a very serious decision, through new paths. Use the term path, well, leaderships that may establish new pathways, which is at the origin of Laudato Si. In Laudato Si, well, many people use it and cite it, but sometimes it is not applied. This should take into account that we need to be aware of the problems, otherwise we are going to end badly. And find students who know how to shake us up, and that make them teach them how to make this happen. And above all, in the economic sciences courses, we need to promote a kind of economics that establishes an integral development of the person. And in this respect, a serious condition this is a serious condition to avoid a philosophy or an economic or social theory that favors that favors the market. It's a social justice of the market, and we need to make it very clear. Social market economy. Without social justice, we cannot think of the development of a country or a person. We talked about integrating the second word, which is inequity. There is inequity which becomes evident in the lack of access to basic goods, and then there's all those sociological definitions uh, without that do not mention women or African descendants or people with disabilities or different capabilities, and they do not have the right to a decision or a labor politics like the perfect ones, as the Argentinian philosopher would refer to as the well finished ones. The others have no right. Everyone has rights. Please teach to students that uh, throwing away is only right when you discard yourself. Otherwise, it is not licit. And this is not a matter of religion. It is not a matter of philosophy. It's human. It's necessary for human uh, uh, life. And this extractivism model is not only extracting from nature, but from people, from a person. When this model goes ahead and reaches the person, it extracts dignity from each person, and this happens never as a geological extractivist model. It also comes hand in hand with the human extractivism model. We extract the dignity of people and they become enslaved. This is the word, and you have to put it in the minds of young people. Education in values, and they are able to recognize these situations and clearly state it. The state of the public and ecological debt. This panel is the one we're going to start right now. Good morning, everyone. We are starting today another day of work. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce my colleagues here who will be able to offer their contributions based on the inspiration we get from Pope Francis and some concepts that he presents that are very strong. I was paying attention when he spoke of inequality in this economic dimension, and we could talk to Michael, and I don't speak Portuguese, but by the mercy of translators, I will try to speak Spanish, and as an act of solidarity, we, I am speaking of Sister who was an eco martyr that was murdered in the state of Pará, and I come from the context of Fordham University that self-identifies as the Jesuit University in New York, but in reality, we found out that there are two New Yorks. We live less than 10 kilometers from Wall Street, the financial heart of the country and also a global financial heart. But we are located in the Bronx, in the poorest congressional district in the country. And this is the reality that we are following and we are seeing in communities, and of course building our identity as university by being committed with those populations. And of course at PUC we are trying to bronze up Fordham, and so in the last 5 years, we've been working in a process of in a federal initiative that started as a process of following closely communities in Bronx that suffer economically but also from the environmental effects. So this connection that we found out, and I speak of a follow-up not in a paternalistic way, but following them as partners and also trying to understand the history of Bronx and the culture, the place where hip hop was born. And with this form of cooperation, we found out some economic factors that were involved in the processes. And in the United States, we call it red lines on maps, according to which the government decides who is eligible to receive loans, for instance, to buy their homes, and then so it's a population very much affected by debts and insurance debts, and there are entire neighborhoods in Bronx that have no financial support. In the 1970s, we were speaking of the burning Bronx, and some owners burned out their buildings to make some money out of it. So, and in this story, there is also an ecological element, which is the asthma walkway, because there is a 50% higher rate of asthma in Bronx. And why is it so in Bronx and not in Manhattan? Because of this cross Bronx road that divided this neighborhood, this highway that divides the neighborhood, and so many trucks circulate on this highway, and so there are many harmful effects.
With the activists from Bronx, we found that the so-called food deserts, because there are no fresh foods markets, this area is like, it's not like a food desert, but a food apartheid. Even though Bronx is a center for food distribution, because food go in and out, they never stay in the Bronx. Because the population who lives in Bronx is marginalized, is an African American and Latin population. So they're forgotten. They're forgotten by the city and by the nation. So we as university, we are aware of these problems, these historical problems, poverty in the Bronx, and also as scientists, we are studying the quality of the water, of the air, the food distribution, etc. And in this, we have discovered many projects, many research projects. And we can bring students, and these students, as Pope Francis said, who are the leaders, who are involved in all the groups in the community. So we have discovered a way to really follow up on these communities. And this is only enriching or improving our university action. So as a theologist and philosopher, this president of the university, he talked about the university as a center outside of itself. For him, the population was a majority of poor people, and for us, this population is what gives us the direction, what steers us as university, because as university we can be a critical awareness, a consciousness of politics. It's conscience that dictates how to work in the university. We were very glad to receive investments worth of $50 million from the federal government to fund these community groups, these grassroots groups, and in 6 months we got more than 1,000 requests for this funding. But since January, as you know, politics has changed a lot in the United States. So we've heard last week, we heard that this support, this funding was canceled. And this funding was directed to the marginalized populations. And as was said, they are no longer a priority of this administration. This federal agency of protection of the environment, of environmental protection. The APA. This is what's happening under Trump. And they are pressuring the universities a lot. But, however, we are together with these communities. We lost the support, we lost this funding, but we've learned so much. We've learned so much about how to be university in the city of New York. So it's an honor for me to share with you, with all of you today. Thank you very much, Michael. First, I would like to thank God for this opportunity. I would like to salute you on behalf of the Selam, because this theme touches our heart, and we have worked and will continue to work with all the stakeholders, people who are involved with the university. So that's why I thank God for this initiative. I thank the university, the president of this university, and all the ones involved, everybody involved in this event. I feel like I am in family. The Latin American and Caribbean Episcopal Council has existed for 70 years. We've been working with the bishops of Latin America and the Caribbean. It has 22 Episcopal conferences. And we have worked for communion, unity, between ourselves, among ourselves, and our goals are to know Jesus and to make all humankind know Jesus through us. So we always work in community, in union, as a collegiality, in collegiality. Last week I can say that because I was talking about COP30 with our Pope Leo, and our Pope, our dear Pope Francis, with whom we talked a lot about these subjects. And I remember Pope Francis on March 19, 2013, at the beginning of his papacy, when he talked about Saint Joseph, he said that we should be caregivers to each other. We should be caregivers of our common home, of the environment. We have to protect and not destroy or harm our common home. So caring for the water, the earth, the environment, the air. And since the beginning, with Laudato Si, Laudato Si, Deo, and Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis has pushed us as Latin American, as part of Selam. It's our obligation to follow this path because we want to build the world with this, facing the challenges that are posed to us. So next week, we are going to talk about climate change in its relationship with synodality. So we want to work together, continue to listen to the call of the poor all over Latin America. It's Jesus Christ who has been here since last year, and we're going to offer to all the Christ that suffer on the cross. We're going to offer that. Are we going to offer them vinegar or water? We're going to offer them water. That's why we're working together as a network. SELAM, the Latin American and Caribbean Episcopal Council, we are working with the conferences, with all the entities, people, institutions who are working towards this goal. We're promoting, of course, with the universities as well. So I know this is a lot, but we cannot fail. So I want to thank you and encourage you because of all you're doing as universities, and we can be close to each other so that we can raise awareness about these problems that come to us. That's why we're working as a network, in network with many entities, and we are speaking the same language, our common home. Our Pope said, you can't destroy or harm our home. We have to care, we have to protect. And this is the time to do that. As universities, we have a very important role to play. The authorities who rule our cities, small and large cities and universities, we have a huge responsibility. Thank you very much. Thank you, Don Lizardo. I'm going to give the floor now to Ramon Pardo of the Episcopal Conference of Spain. Good morning. The world is very large, but it's actually also very small. And with the globalization of means of communication, we can establish networks, we can exchange information and experience. So this morning, my friend from Ross told me, I met Don Lizardo. He's a very interesting character. Oh, yes. I know where he is. He is here. So I started talking to him, and what happened was that the University of Theology of the University of Salamanca, we realized that we have a friend in common who is also a friend of Prevost. I'm going to talk about Leo 13th. So one of the ideas that he states is that in order to have a contract in Rerum Novarum, he says that two parts of the contract should be similar. If one part is not similar, you have to subject to the other one. So if you're signing a contract, it has to be just. So Pio 11 says that that's when the debt starts. It's debt of injustice. You have that debt towards the person who suffered the injustice. And right now, I believe that this has a lot to do with the first intervention here, we have a transgeneration and a historical debt. So what happens is that we have to understand where we are now in terms of our ecological debt, and it has a lot to do with our foreign debt. We can also talk about Pope Paul VI, because after the process of decolonization, the metropolises have followed or have taken advantage of the countries that were developing. So I'll keep the the raw materials, I'll keep the labor force, and I'll keep the profit as well. But you understand where I'm going, right? That's the historical death that is created. There is a debt that is unrecognized but is historical. And that is transgenerational. So now we have an ecological debt that was also emphasized by Pope Francis, and we can add this to the foreign debt and monetary debt. And this means that, as usually, poor countries arrive late. So rich countries, they start first. They take advantage of nature. They explore what they need, and though there's no awareness there. And so now what you have is that this debt increases. When we gain awareness of this debt, you have to acknowledge its existence. But if there is inequality, historical inequality over time, we have to recognize that there is an inequality in terms of responsibility. Inequality in the responsibility and the ability to recover. Therefore, the larger contaminants, those who pollute the most should also recover the most and also invest in this recovery. They have to care for this common good, and this includes the debt. We can talk about interests or interest rates or interest, but we're not going to go into this now. It would be very interesting. We're not going to do this now. It would be an interesting economic discussion. But Pope Francis does not point to where we want to get. Just like Jesus. Many of Jesus's moral and ethical directions point into a direction. So that's why we are concerned about the dignity of human beings, because go into the direction of wholeness. And this means that we need to work in network, we need to commit, we need to walk together, and this is also part of what we're doing here. Listening to the Pope, he said that a way to do that is to disregard oneself. So when I think about Pope Francis, I remember my mother, because my mother, she said in Spanish, and this, we had a problem, and we are conjugating it backwards. The first person, me. Second person, you. Third person, him. So we need to conjugate first him, second you, and last me. So what we have to do is to take the advantage of redistribute assets and goods in a more egalitarian way, so that we can overcome the past debt and also better directing the resources of investment to improve justice. Thank you very much. Thank you, Roman. So Michael talked a little bit about the perspective from the territory. Don Luzardo talked about the community and network work. And Tomas talked about the ecological debt, which is the theme of our Congress and of today. So thank you for your contributions. We're going to move on to the next conference.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, panelists. So I'd like to ask you to ask Bishop Leonardo Steiner, Archbishop of Manaus, Brazil, and the moderator, Ms. Hikuda from the Pontifical Commission for Latin America.
Buenos días a todas y todos.
Good morning to all. Thank you very much for allowing me to represent Cardinal Steiner. For us, it's a privilege to be here. Cardinal had the trust of Pope Francis to be Archbishop of Manaus, and Cardinal Castillo, I would like to give the floor to you, but before I would like to show you an image by Argentinian painter of a character called Juanito Laguna. This is something that we were looking at with Don Leonardo, and this is an Argentinian artist. And if you look closely, this is also our common home, because it bothers me really that COP and the broad international scenarios, whenever we talk about the common home, they look something that they show something that is really beautiful. I used to work in the outskirts, in the periphery, and my students have never seen beauty. Their eyes had never gazed upon beauty. They live in the trash. There are millions and millions of dollars to save the lions in the savannah, the African savannah, and children are still living in the middle of the trash. What was said about the Bronx is an example. This is not new. This happened since the 1960s. So when we ask you to consider and to contemplate the beauty and the common home, we have to think that people don't see beauty. We are privileged. If we're here, seated here, we're all privileged. We went to university, we know the world, we've been places, and this is a privilege. Our people live in the trash. And when we talk about social injustice, we have to think about that. People don't want to take pictures with us because they are afraid they're going to be called communists. It's a shame. It's shameful that at this point in history, people won't want to take pictures so that they won't be called communists. This is the reality of our people.
I think that Don Leonardo is the ideal person to speak of this common home because he knows it, because he's in Brazil, because he's in the Amazonas state, and because he can tell us about it. So what about this public and ecological debt from the standpoint of Latin America? First of all, I would like to thank the invitation for being here, but also thank you for the initiative of organizing this Congress. And because it is an initiative also promoted by universities, we are in need of seeing universities offering us again the future as in the past in relation to politics, in relation to democracy, in relation to economics, which is the topic we are addressing, but also in relation to fraternity. Frater- and it would be interesting in a future Congress in relation to Fratelli Tutti. In a future Congress, it would be interesting to make the link between Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti. I think that some of the points raised here can help us. When we were with met Pope Francis once, Cardinal Damasceno asked, "Is it true that you are preparing an encyclical on the environment?" And yes, and it is this high. We are now working to become pleasant and legible. And then he turned to me and he said, "Do you know the title of the encyclical?" "Well, how could I guess what you're thinking? So come with me," he said. And then he moved to the elevator, and in front of which a there was a painting in which it was written Laudato Si. Read it, and I read Laudato Si, and that's the title of the encyclical. And how good was the encyclical, and what good it brought, because I participated in a seminar in Germany regarding the environment years ago. I was still in São Felix do Araguaia, and one of the scientists who were there, one of them very linked to the church, told me, "You were very positive. The Amazon continues to be deforested, and if it continues to be so, it will become a huge freshwater lake." And I said, "Yes, but we will try to take care of the Amazon so that it does not become a freshwater lake, but that it continues to take rain to every region in Brazil." And being at the Frankfurt airport years later, someone taps um, on my back and says, "I am proud of being a Catholic scientist." "What do you mean?" "Why, haven't you read the encyclical by Pope Francis?" Me, as a scientist, I am charmed by the encyclical. Unfortunately, we were not yet able to take the encyclical to the most isolated communities. We in Manaus are trying to get there. We are trying to raise funds to take the encyclical to the countryside communities, taking both Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti. This topic of the environment is very well expressed in Querida Amazonia. Querida Amazonia establishes 4 dreams based on which we also try to organize this Congress. So nothing is outside the experience of faith. The social, cultural, ecological dreams and the community of faith, nothing is outside of the experience of faith. And this is extraordinary in the text named Querida Amazonia. And I call it the hermeneutics of totality. So, how to read the gospel and how to read the gospels, but being in the world, this world that exists, this world of the poor that was shown minutes ago in the painting, this way of reading, but also of making the life of the gospel to bloom, well, is something that Pope Francis could see in an extraordinary way regarding the Amazon. And in the Amazon region, we try to take it very seriously. The church in the Amazon has a long, long path, and a path that was expressed in the Synod of the Amazon, and which is expressed in the text, Querida Amazonia. And we know our responsibility. We are aware of it. So all of these social, ecological, and cultural issues and this community of faith forms a whole. And without this whole, we are not able to understand each other. Without this whole, we're not able to understand ourselves as human beings and also as church. Without this whole, this entirety, we are not able to situate ourselves. We don't know where we are. Pope Francis was saying the discarded, if the discarded are not seen, we will not meet them and we do not become again. We're not, it's not that we don't offer dignity, but we don't make it possible for them to be dignified again. And then this is important. Those four dreams were important because they form a whole. Heidegger would say, being in the world, taking into account the entire perspective of where we are as an experience of faith, and this is extraordinary in the text. As for the issue of how we try to do it, we are taking very seriously this text, Querida Amazonia, and little by little we are forming small study groups with children and teenagers, adolescents, to study Querida Amazonia and Laudato Si, and awakening people in communities and awakening people to be able to do this kind of reading and then work on the validity of the hermeneutics of totality. The communities, they themselves are taking initiatives on these reflections, and they are, for instance, working on waste collection or working on the waste that we see in the city of Manaus and which became a huge problem. Tons and tons of waste go to the rivers, and the Jesuit father who is here already reminded us of the issue of waters, sewage treatment. A city of 2.3 million people having only 20% of its sewage treated is a huge sin. We are polluting the rivers, and Laudato Si and Querida Amazonia are two texts that help us to realize the huge devastation that we see in the Amazon with mining, gold mining. Not only devastating the forest, but devastating the human being. We have been seeing indigenous people whose children have no hair. Why? Because they are ingesting mercury, and our body does not digest mercury, which is used in gold mining, illegal gold mining, and this pollutes not only the rivers but also the fish. So when we ingest fish, we also ingest mercury. And children who bathe in the small rivers, well, mercury gets into their bodies, to their belly button, and it's no longer eliminated by their body. It is a real disaster. And then comes the economic aspect. Why this destruction? Why? Because of gold. The death of Bruno and Dom Philip, who was internationally known, was only about money. Deforestation, what's behind it? Money. So when we address the economic issue, there is here a deep relationship with the environment, and we as church, we try to do this work of awareness raising and perception that we really need to take care of our common home. Maybe it would be interesting to tell us about what is the organization, the communitarian political organization. You mean because Pope Francis in Laudato Si, he denounces the situation, and in Fratelli Tutti he says that the solution comes from the underground of the planet, and and meaning by this a political and communitary use. And I don't know if we can say that the Amazon state is outside of civilization, but what are the organizations present there? How do they organize themselves, and how can we share it with our colleagues? Well, I had the grace to be sent into the indigenous people and populations. I am from the south of Brazil with an European education, and I was named bishop of San Pedro do Araguaia, and I was very much in contact with the Carajá people in the Bananal Island, and another contact was with the Tapirapé people and the Chavante people. So there are other 5 indigenous people in the region, but they weren't so close as those 3. And the ecological issue was deeply related to the economic issue, because the Tapirapé village, in the Tapirapé villages, men gather at night in the takana, which is a house created for these meetings, built for these meetings. But everything that will be discussed in the takana by men has been discussed at home. So nothing comes into the village if the women don't want it, because first they discuss it at home. For instance, to introduce electricity in the village, it took more than 10 years, and they talk about it, and they talk, and they talk. What is electricity good for? What harms it will cause? Oh, we are going to have TV introduced. We are going to lose our culture at night. We won't meet again. We won't gather again. So this mode, this of life, of community that seeks the best for the village was very present. And it's very interesting because in economical terms, the Tapirapé don't think first in the I. Ramon was saying moments ago, and it was very significant. They don't think first I. For instance, in the Tapirapé villages, almost all teachers, they have higher education, thank God. So there were 47, 48 people only, and in the church now 1,200, 1,300. And the teacher, they goes get his pay in the city, and it has been this is something that was recovered thanks to the help of the church. And the teacher thinks of and decides at home about what they will need, but also they talk among themselves about what the village needs. So when they come back to the village, they don't leave their money in the bank. They bring it to the entire village, and there is enough until the next month. So, and then here we see a little of what the economy word carries. So Nemen, administration, eco, house. So we lost this perception of the economy which should serve our house administration, home administration. For them, it's not about sharing, it's about a way of being, of existing, in which every Tapirapé has his or her dignity. The Tapirapé people is very sensitive, and thanks to the help of the church, they were able to recover their traditions and many other aspects. But it's so communitarian in its essence that when someone dies, they are not buried outside of the village. They are buried at home, inside their home. Why? Because the person is part of the family and of their home. And in the place where this person slept, no one else can sleep, because the person is buried underneath that place. And there are 7 days of ritual of grieving and dancing. And this brings us the sense of community, this sense of serving one another, and no one is discarded. It is so interesting that no tapirapé lives outside of the village. Every tapirapé lives in the village. And I think that this idea of culture, and it's also something that means to be a people, and everything is discussed and shared and common. And it's so interesting to watch soccer with them. They love playing soccer. When there is a goal, there is no goal actually, because you cannot harm the other. So no one no one strikes a goal because they cannot harm the other, but they are always running after the ball. So one community element, and the element of dignity is very striking. Also, there was a case in that caused a lot of suffering to communities, because one of the chiefs of one of the villages went to that allowed someone to go into the sacred cave and harvest some precious stones, but it was a sacred place, and they could not destitute the other, so they need, in spite of their mistake, to continue with the same dignity. But see how extraordinary this old man, old chief of the main village said, well, maybe we could do the following. All of us chiefs, we renounce, and then each village will name a new chief. Of course, it took 1, 2, 3 nights of discussion until they reached the conclusion that this was the solution, that they would step down. But no one could be diminished in their dignity. No one could be punished because of the mistake. You see how extraordinary it is, because what extraordinary relation there is in terms of people. That's why the original people, the native people, they have a lot to teach us, because this is a relation that serves. That's what manages the village life and the people's life. Another example comes from the Chavante people. The Chavante people is a warrior people. And in the prelacy, there was a village, and when I arrived, they were outside their lands. They were not able to be back in their land. Pedro Casal Dáliga had been working for a long time in it and on it, and then they could return to their land. And the first thing that they did was what? Kissing the ground, the land. And it moves me even today, because then I realized what the land was, what a home was, what living or in a place is. The farmers that had taken care of those lands, they saw only profit, money, but not for those people. It was their home. They did not see profit. Of course, that little by little also this our westernized way of profiting from things is more and more present, but it is very impactful to see a people returning to their land, and a destroyed land. The first thing that they did was starting to plant trees. First thing, and then reintroduce the rites of initiation in the Chavante life with children. So when we speak of ecology and economy and etc., what is the relationship that has been established between us and the other beings and also human beings.
I think that the bottom line of Laudato Si is the fact that you read and this always comes back to you. So you go through the whole document because this pertains to the relationship between human beings and between human beings and things. And this is recurring. It's a recurring thing. It even talks about conversion. So these peoples, they have a lot to teach us as to how we should inhabit our common home. Thank you very much. I would like to go back to the last theme, the theme of relationship. The purpose of this meeting is relationship, so that there is a relationship with the South, North American universities and Europe relationship. So I would like to talk about this, especially so that you don't bring a ready speech that has nothing to do with the relationship. The fact that we're listening to each other is what fosters us to think together, and we're all worthy of taking the floor and expressing ourselves, and this is the only way we can know each other and live in relationship. And in the university tribe or village, this is where we work, and we're very happy that you're working with us and contributing and helping in the territories, and how are going to help us in Belém. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now we start our last work groups. So now we're going to go back, we're going to break into groups the same way we've been doing in the past 3 days. So we are going to move you into one of the groups. Before we go, some recommendations so that we can better organize. After group work, we're going to have lunch, and then we're going to have an activity. It's going to be an exhibition of people who work with trash, waste. And then we're going to go to the museum.